My dear friends, since it's been a few days since the presidential election and a lot of people are upset at who won and a lot of people really love who won, I have somebody that we can all agree to hate on to talk about, and that is Dick Cheney. Because I recently saw for the first time the movie Vice. And I'm going to go ahead and skip to the part where I endorse you seeing this movie because boy, howdy, this is a flick. Directed by Adam McKay, probably best known for Talladega Nights, the Anchorman movies, The Other Guys, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Basically, this movie is what happens when you ask him to do something serious and give him a serious budget to do it with. Because this thing is visually lush, highbrow and lowbrow, and the direction of the movie is really worth all the hubbub and the talk that it got. It won a slew of awards, but only one Oscar for best makeup and effects for what they did to Christian Bale to make him look like Dick Cheney. But honestly, that robbed this movie so hard because best director at a minimum. This thing was creative. This thing was fantastic. It has that same frenetic energy that he brought to those other movies that I talked about. But when applied to a political context, we have a political movie like none others that I remember seeing. It was phenomenal. Just the creativity that he brought to how he structured the story, how he got his shots done, how he tied everything together. Because Dick Cheney, he's lived a long time. He's done a lot of things. And how do you succinctly tell that story, which was a problem we had in the Reagan movie, and that it did an okay job at? This was absolutely perfect. If you're a fan just of cinema itself and seeing how directors do different, innovative, and striking things, watch this movie for that alone. McKay does a phenomenal job, as does the cinematographer, and the cast he has to work with. Okay, you got Christian Bale, who I don't think I've ever seen him do a bad job at anything, as Dick Cheney. You got Sam Rockwell. Again, I will watch a movie just because Sam Rockwell's in it. Because even if the movie's bad, he's not going to be bad in the role as George W. Bush. And the only gripe I've got there is that Sam Rockwell's a lot shorter than W is. But that's okay. You got Steve Carell as pretty good Rumsfeld. Amy Adams as Dick Cheney's wife. And it keeps going on and on and on. And every one of them turns in a stellar performance as a reasonable stand-in to the person that they are intended to portray. Now, when this movie first came out, I didn't want to see it. I was like, screw this. This is being pushed by all the people that hate people like me. It's just going to be another liberal circle jerk where they eat the cracker on camera. Because a lot of projects like this are. Was it going to be another W is an idiot entertainment product, in which case, screw it. I've seen it. It's been done into the ground. And so what? Now your angle's Dick Cheney. Ooh. Well, I will confess that at the time, the propaganda had worked on me. I mean, I am a guy who voted for W twice and signed up for the U.S. Army when he had all those wars going on. And I listened to Dick Cheney's autobiography, and I would defend the guy. Well, don't worry. I'm cured. I figured some things out. I figured out some things that folks on the other side of the political spectrum from me had long known about the bullshit wars and what they were really there to advance. Well, if you're against wars, we're on the same page these days. And so since I had that transformation, I thought, okay, I'll listen to my wife and I'll give this movie a try. And I was so impressed by what I got. Now, some people accuse this movie of being biased, and it does acknowledge its potential for bias in the credits. But having listened to Dick Cheney's autobiography, like I said, and paid attention at the time, it is biased, but it's reasonably biased. Like, this could be an accurate representation of the subject matter, depending on your perspective. But the core of the facts are basically right. The only thing that I found myself disagreeing with was how kid glove Colin Powell got treated in this movie. And oh yeah, by the way, Colin Powell is portrayed by Tyler Perry. I think Colin Powell was far dirtier than this movie lets on. But anyway, enough of the generics. What's this movie about? Well, it is a chronicling of the rise to power of Dick Cheney, from when he was a jerk living in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, which is most of the state, to his success in business, to his rise in politics, and eventually taking the VP slot. And the movie does a great job of wrapping up complicated scenarios and events of his life and that the nation was going through at the time in stylized ways and evocative scenes that, while they might not be 100% correct to how a conversation actually went, it captures the essence of what was going on. In addition to the creative framing of certain historical episodes, there's a recurring narrative device as told by this guy who I can't name but is in friggin' everything, so he must have a fantastic agent. Though I was initially wondering, why is this guy here? By the time that paid off, and boy, does it pay off? It led to some of the most memorable cinema I've ever seen and will probably never be able to unsee. And there's a credit sequence that you will not see coming, and it was hilarious. So whether you're a fan of political films, a fan of cinema on its own, or you really want to see what happens with the guy who routinely directs Will Ferrell takes on a serious subject, Vice is the movie for you.